All right. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our ongoing series. I don't know how many parts we're going to be. Trying to convince BJ and or Sarah to maybe we'll do some actual gameplay of Coyote and Crow, but we're going to talk here at least about the second part about Coyote and Crow, some things we did not talk about the last time, character creation, how the game system works. And there are some, since this was on BJ's Arcane Alienist podcast, we're going to field some questions from that podcast and give some answers. So our participants today are myself. I'm Carl Rodriguez from the Geomologist Presents. And then we have BJ Boyd of the Arcane Alienist and Sarah
Hello.
Rhoades-Kerswill from
What's up?
what do you have? Do you have to, I don't even know what do you want to have something to promote? A
I
channel?
do not have anything to promote, just having fun.
Great. All right. Okay. So let's start with those calls, I think, right? Is that what we want to do?
Okay. Yeah, these are calls I got from Brian, who I don't know if his podcast, I guess it's kind of on permanent hiatus. He's to look that up. Podcast used to be part of our kind of anchor community of podcasters. And so I don't know if Brian, I think I've called into his show a few times in the past. We've had some discussions back and forth via message, but hadn't heard from him in a while. So let's hear what he has to say. This is going to be about 5 minutes. I think it's one extended message. You know, with Anchor, it comes in and you get 60 seconds, then it cuts you off. So he left a series, but I think it's meant to be all one long message. So
okay. So would you rather do the message one at a time or in minute snippets and then?
let me play the first minute, and then we'll see if it makes sense to respond then, and then go. If not, I'll go into the next part.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Years ago, but I've been listening to your podcast and really enjoyed the first part of your Coyote and Crow review done with Sarah and Carl. I guess just a few thoughts. I backed this when it came out. I was pretty excited. I grew up in the U.S. I live now in Australia, and although I'm not of Native American ancestry, I think the idea, when the idea was pitched, it's pretty cool. Just in general, just kind of imagining a different future, especially from a future of, the Americas or North America not being colonized, and just what can happen, as a game concept first is pretty interesting. So just as a game in comparison to other games, I think the setting and the concept and just the creativity that goes in the lore is interesting and compelling, and makes me want to play it. And in going through the PDF, now that it's been released, I get the same sense. And I do think I don't want to get too. I don't want to stray too far from games, but I do think it's important, and I think the creator's been pretty open about it, at least the way that I've interpreted it. And I've even had some email exchanges, kind of it was released, with some updates, pretty great email exchanges, I should say. Is just I think it is great that there is a game that's made by Native American creators, with Native Americans as sort of a primary or as an important audience. But I also love that the push is that, hey, this game is for everyone.
All right.
Yeah, I think we respond there.
So, we got a little more, but there's a good stop.
Yeah.
I think we touched on that in the other episode about, the game it's clearly not meant just for Native people to play. It's for everybody, and other people encouraged to play, and even encouraged to, if you're not Native, to ask questions and learn more about Native cultures and worldviews, but also not to just assume stuff, and to sort of kind of be open-minded and flexible, and also I think there's some stuff in there trying to help you avoid stereotypes, being insensitive or insulting, even if you don't mean to be, things like that. So you guys have any thoughts on what we got so far from Brian?
I think for me, I asked a lot of questions. I feel in our last iteration not being Native American or Native American heritage. And I think you guys fielded them really well to answer the questions that I had about the things that were discussed, and the direction that was given by the authors of Coyote and Crow. Sarah, do you?
I don't have anything. I agree. I think it's like we talked about last time. It's great that it's open for everybody. It's pretty inclusive.
Right.
I think there is I did have a thought, not based on Brian's call, but the more as I thought about our discussion, something that sometimes happens. Sarah, you've probably experienced this doubly because you're both you're a woman, so I'm sure you've had men mansplain things to you. But as a native, sometimes people white-splain things to us. And Carl, I don't know if you've ever had that experience of people who aren't Latino trying to. It's
Yeah,
like
and I think
I know a little bit about Native culture, and they start telling you about your own history, and you're like, yeah, I know. I grew up with that. I've lived that. That is my family you're talking about. I don't know if people just get so enthusiastic to have something that they a touch point to connect on, but then you're like, wait a minute, no, that's not correct. That's not actually how that happened. No, that's not what that means. No, that's not why we do that. So
yeah, and unfortunately, and I think the authors touch on this in Coyote and Crow, is a lot of these preconceived notions and stereotypes are driven by the media, Hollywood, what we see. So they're definitely, Hollywood stereotypes that when you really need to dispel, I think, and when you pick up Coyote and Crow, and I think they do a good job of saying, how to do that, telling you how to do that. So
okay. Ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, like all games, and especially independent games, this gives an opportunity, one, to play a great game, play something new for people that may be only exposed to a certain set of games. But two, and I'll just say, as someone who's not Native American, and even in the country that I'm living in now, I'm not Indigenous. I'm not even. I am a pure immigrant. My wife's from Australia, but I immigrated here, to live with her and to raise our son here, and it leads to that curiosity. And you guys hit on it during the discussion that you can enjoy the lore and the game, but it's based and inspired by so many different Native nation cultures. And I like how you talked about that. That could lead to conversations, out of game, maybe away from the table, which I think is great. And I think it's something that's needed, and maybe that's getting a little bit too high a goal. But I like that that's a part of it, if it makes sense. I think I may be in a minority from the sense that I know, gosh, over the last, and probably not just the last 5 years, it's been 10 or more, growing up in the US, I've kind of come to learn a lot of things and question and look at my own family's background. My family are Italian immigrants, and I've been reconnecting with that. And of course that's a small story, but in living here and working with a lot of people from different Asian countries, especially Southeast Asian countries, I think it's really important to get different perspectives. And I think there's different perspectives on types of games, different RPGs, ones that emphasize certain things over others. And from that, it could lead to greater conversations about culture. So maybe that's a RPGs trying to solve world problems, maybe, but so it's probably a stretch too far.
Yeah, I think we had earlier. I was at a conference early this year. It was an Indigenous American focused conference, but we had a person there who was actually from Australia and was telling us a little bit about sort of the things they deal with as the Indigenous people in Australia do. So I'm sure, Brian, you got your work cut out for you to learn about all the intricacies and the history and the highs and lows of Indigenous Australia. And that includes, I think we think of Aboriginals when we think of Indigenous Australians, but they do have Maori and other Pacific Islander people that are Indigenous people there as well. Australia's got a lot of, not the same and a lot of differences, but certainly through the history of European expansion and colonization, there's some similar stories there as well. And of course, I think you'll find if you find tribal indigenous people who live that sort of tribal communal lifestyle, you'll probably see some similarities all over the world in terms of just kind of the way some things kind of hold the same. You know, you don't want to assume that one group is identical to the other because it's very different, but you'll see some little things that are just sort of commonalities, I think, to people who are still living in a very tribal, community focused way. So, do you guys have any thoughts on what he said there?
No, I think it is awesome that a game can bring people together and have them ask questions and get to know about things that are not from their background. I think Brian touched on that. So that's what I got from his calls there.
I know when he was still doing his podcast, he traveled. I think he travels a lot to Singapore for business, but he found a game shop there where he would go play games while he was there on business. So he'll have to let us know if Coyote and Crow is on the shelves in Singapore.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
All right, we got one last little segment here from.
Anyway, sorry I left a few messages. Please don't feel the need to use all of these.
Too late.
I'll just wrap up and say, yeah, thanks for the review. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the next part. And I'm also gonna get this game to the table. I need to put some thought behind it, and I'm waiting. The physical version is coming over to me with some family here in a few weeks, because I think it's important to kind of show the physical book around to everybody and the art, and let them have a chance to look through it as we kind of explain this. And I don't know that any. I mean, I'm guessing. I'm pretty sure no one will be of Native American origin. I might be wrong. However, being here in Australia, there might be some folks with some First Nation, Indigenous origins here, or I'd say similar backgrounds. So I'd be just very interested to see how they approach and what they think of the game and some of the concepts in it. Thanks.
All right, I think that's everything from Brian.
Yeah, I think they did have. I know they were working on, or I had read that they're working on like a Mexico area, Central American, South American area. So I feel like they'll probably be working on, a similar type of world book for the Pacific. I mean, I don't see why not, and why you couldn't try to expand it or adapt it somehow. I think that'd be pretty cool. I'm sure you could go on honestly, you probably could go on the Coyote and Crow Discord and strike up a discussion about that. I'm sure people are homebrewing it somehow, right?
I know they mentioned Hawaii in passing in the book as far as other parts of the world. South America is known to the people in the core setting, because but they sort of mentioned this place out in the ocean that people have heard of that may or may not exist, and it's clearly they're talking about Hawaii.
Right.
All right. Well, I appreciate Brian. I think we should thank Brian for the call. It's good to hear.
Thank you, Brian.
It's been a while, so stay in touch, Brian.
All right. So I guess there's some things that, unless you guys have anything, either Sarah or BJ, if you have anything from the last time that you felt you wanted to bring up that we didn't bring up.
I don't.
Okay. No, I think so. I think today we're going to talk about, I think, a couple more important concepts in the game that I think, and that is the Adan Adi, which is the way that the I guess magic or science as magic manifests in the world, and then about the technology. And I think the technology is important because there is no colonialization, so the technology developed, and I think in a different and unique way based on what the technology was, in our world prior to those events. So I think it's probably very important to discuss the technology because I think that informs the game. And then I think after that we'll talk about characters and how to create a character. I know that both of you created the characters already. I haven't dived into it. I've looked at it, but you could tell me about how your character creation went, and then I can maybe throw in some things that I might want to do for my character. And then we'll talk about, I think, the D12 system, if that sounds good with y'all.
Okay.
Okay, so I know we hinted at it, but the Adanadi, and it was given sort of it was prior to this in the book, which I think is fantastic, and we discussed this a lot last time, is that this was kind of, it was hinted at, it was told about in the context of stories and traditions that were passed on from generation to generation. But in this chapter, they have a whole chapter on it. They actually codify it. So you guys maybe have, I've read it like once and I haven't like incorporated it into my character. So maybe you guys can tell us what it is.
Well, it is it's a so in the book it says the Adenadi touches almost every level living thing in Makasing, which is the land, and it's a factor in this sort of sudden growth in technological, social change, bringing people with enhanced abilities, gives them their power. So it's changed the really. I guess you have to kind of imagine a world in which almost everybody has some degree of superhuman ability. That doesn't mean that everybody's a superhero or a supervillain, but they do have metahuman abilities, even if they're just very kind of low grade. It says that most people go through the process.
But not everybody comes out with those super level powers. That's
Right.
still roughly a minority of the people that do that, and it's done as you enter adulthood. So it's a rite of passage into adulthood. I don't know, BJ, if you were ready to talk about the ceremony part of it.
I'm going back to the glossary to make sure I didn't miss anything on the description of just the basic. No, I did not. Okay. Let me find my place in the book here.
Yeah, I thought while B is looking for that, I felt like there was kind of like they almost describe it to me as like some sort of symbiotic life form that incorporated itself into the genetics, the genome of plants, animals, and then eventually people. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's this. You begin to see naturally occurring signs of purple splotches is how they describe it on animals, plants, people that just sort of naturally have occurred as this thing has sort of permeated the world. And so there's a sort of a natural symbiosis or connection to it. But then over time, through study and science stuff, they've learned how to guide it in specific directions, right? So it's seen as both a spiritual blessing from the Great Spirit, but then that also gets into sort of the sci-fi elements as well of the setting. So they over the centuries, the spots begin to themselves become the basis of certain ceremonies and traditions. The different nations probably describing different meanings to that and slightly different versions of what that is. Says no tribe on the planet was left untouched by the Adenadi. The name became common during trade explosion between the Ktuagi Republic and the Abayang. I'm trying to remember. The Ktuagi is the southwest, and the Abayang is at the north or southeast and northeast. I have to pull the map up, but yeah, as people begin trading and seeing, oh, you got that too, a common language, a common understanding begins to develop across the different nations. But it says the real power begins once there's advancements. You get advanced math, and then you start to get science, and then they can study biology and chemistry and look at it as a biological, natural phenomenon as well as a spiritual, metaphysical one.
Yeah, and it's definitely not like, I think what I think was interesting to me is it also is it's more neurological in that, it's like because you kind of, your powers manifest based on what during the ritual, what is inspired or what inspires the participant in the ritual, right?
Mhm.
So it's not like they incorporate DNA from the type of animal that they associate with. It's
Yeah.
it's because you feel like, for example, the example they give is like a fox is agile and cunning. You develop abilities that heighten your agility and cunningness, I guess.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I
We
think
got a
it's
little bit of
pretty.
a maybe shout out to Spider-Man there. I think you think about, there's no way you get spider DNA from their venom, right?
Yeah,
And I don't know, have you seen the trailer to Madam Web
I have not.
they've released? It doesn't look like a very good movie, but one of the characters they're incorporating, that Ezekiel, is I think it's Ezekiel, his name. There was a story back in the early aughts, the story arc in Spider-Man, where this old guy shows up who has the exact same abilities as Peter Parker, and they get into the idea of there's a scientific explanation for Spider-Man's powers. Yeah, his DNA got mutated because he got bitten by a radioactive spider. There's also a metaphysical explanation for Spider-Man's power that has to do with the spider spirit and a spider totem. And that's why a lot of his foes wind up being themed along other animals.
Okay,
Is
but he doesn't have spinnerets, right?
It's sort of reflected, right?
He never developed spinnerets
so
anywhere. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, they had one phase where he developed it, and they took it. They did away with that again. And proved not to be popular, but that character is at least in the previews portrayed as going to be the antagonist in the Madam Web movie.
Interesting.
But yeah, this whole, I think it was J. Michael Straczynski, when he was writing Spider-Man, got into this notion of you kind of develop the spider powers because your brain said that
You got bitten by a
what happened
spider.
to me should give me spider powers, because really, when you think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense
Right.
otherwise. But it's also a way in which you were connected to this sort of spirit of the spider and sort of granted these abilities as well. And it gives it this idea that it's not an either or, that they're both equally valid explanations. I see that kind of reminds me of that here, where there's this metaphysical, spiritual, cultural aspect to it.
Hence the ritual at a rite of passage.
And I guess the more we learn about epigenetics, maybe it's not so far fetched, right?
I mean, a lot of I don't want to get into we don't have to get into epigenetics, but I do know a little bit about it.
Podcast.
Yeah. Go ahead,
I
Sarah.
think there is they do a lot of duality with it. Like, even just describing what the Adenati is, it is maybe a little bit of a eukaryote, a little bit of a bacteria, a little bit of maybe something older, and yet at the same time, none of them, right? So there's a lot of it's all of these and none of these at the same time, which I really like. So it lets you, as a player, kind of choose your path through that.
Right. Yeah, maybe it could
but
influence what your player's powers might be, or how your player approaches, right? So I think what's also very curious is they do have a discussion of the ramifications of quote unquote superpowers into the society, right? So, especially like in sports and competition, does it give you an edge, right? Again, this is, like I mentioned last time, this is to me, it's really cool. One of the few gaming products that has like actual talks about sports in the game, like competitions in the game, which you don't see that a lot. But even in like I never really see that ramification in comic books, where like what if low-level supers are playing football or something? I never really see them touch on that. So I think this is really cool that they say, okay, these are the issues that could occur when 15 to 20% of the population is augmented.
Yeah, they touch on it in the Incredibles, right? Where
and the Incredibles they do,
but not in actual comic books,
right?
Cool.
All right.
Well, I guess Spider-Man was a professional wrestler, and then they go in the assumption, at least in the comic books, that professional wrestling is completely not like there's no, it's not scripted,
right?
But,
cool. All right. Anything else we wanted to say about the Adenati?
So Sarah, you mentioned the ceremony. You want to talk about that a little bit?
it's a coming of age ceremony at the point where we are when we start jumping into the story. It's a highly refined process, so they inject parts of an animal. It has to be an animal, not a plant, because plants don't work the same. So instead of ingesting part of an animal, they just inject it, and some of it, if I remember, they talk about it being maybe even they have a way of manufacturing it from the animal that they then go and use in other things as well as part of the science.
Hmm.
And that's what drives a lot of the technology that they end up using, like don't have the wheel, but we do have hovercraft, that sort of thing. All comes from the Adenati.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Which is a great segue, Sarah. Thank you for then
You're welcome.
we're jumping into technology. And I think what's kind of cool is like they have a really nice introduction. I thought one of the better many one of the many ones introductions that are really nice in the book, and how they outline and what the authors are communicating is what they're thinking about and their thought process in this. And they say that in many fictional worlds, the tools and technology found are based on development of the path that leads back to Western European sources, right? So they talk about, your broadswords and your guns and all that kind of stuff. But then they say, however, in Coyote and Crow, corporations and industrialization never really took a foothold, at least not to the same degree. Instead, blueprints and recipes are commonly referred to as woyi, are shared, right, for basic items printed by their like equivalent of 3D printers called GATs.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's more of like as opposed to industrialization and assembly lines and everyone is a cog in a wheel. It's all about craftsmanship and art, the artisan, artisanal, I don't know if that's a word, artisanal nature of the craft, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's really kind of a cool way to set up the basis for all the different technologies that they have.
Yeah. Well, I think we touched on in the discussion last time, part of the reason you don't see the evidence in North America of the large settlements in the cities really is because metallurgy and stonemasonry were not technologies that were developed. So everything was made out of wood and earth, hides, bone, things like that don't stand up the way stone structures will. The tools won't survive. I mean, of course, we still to this day find arrowheads and spearheads and stone tools and things like that, but not the same way you might find metal artifacts, in the Mediterranean or in Europe or other places like that. When you start digging around, in here, they don't. There's still no metallurgy. It's these GATs 3D print. If I'm remembering correctly, the implication is they're still printing them from more organic materials, plant-based materials.
Yeah, it's organic.
They learned how to create. It's I think maybe some of it's ceramic, but it's not. It's the things that would have still been traditional North American mediums to work with: pottery, plants, things like that, stone,
right.
And not there's nothing made out of metal. I don't think.
Right. And then there's like instead of hydrocarbon based fuel sources, it's solar power, wind, geothermal, hydroelectric.
Yeah.
And like you said, they're like lift technology, for example, that comes from like a bioorganic situation or technology where they take this Adenati plant tissue and suspend it into a vacuum ring. But then I think what is kind of interesting, they do use like actual atomics and physical theory and physics theory to describe how it actually works, with gravitons, positrons, etc. So it's still based on the physics that we know exists, but a different kind of path of technology to manifest I mean, it is a sci-fi setting, right? So
right,
it's to manifest the sci-fi-ness of the setting.
No vibranium mounds for us.
Yeah, but see, that would be like mining and that type of technology, right? It's not growing and harvesting, right? It's like this idea of like not destroying the earth, but using replenishable goods that the earth gives to you. I would say.
Yeah, and I think that I mean it probably won't come as a surprise to many people that that is kind of consistent with a indigenous worldview way of living to live in balance, not to control the environment, but to be a dynamic part of it that lives in kind of a state of balance and flow and you know cycles that turn over and over again.
Right.
Um,
But they still have like
you know, I know some people say a lot of people sound like kind of hippie dreams, but
right, but again, it's still like a sci-fi setting, like we said, that they have, augmented reality that they call second eyes. There's
Mhm.
still telecommunications, though it's, limited, right? There's been no space travel, but I mean,
right,
but it's not like that can't happen, right? In your setting, they're definitely the technology is there, and they talk about there are people who want to do that, but it's just not, sounds like a big industrial go push, right? It's like, um, how does it develop organically? How do you explore your passion? I would
yeah.
say. Again,
They
think of
use that.
the artist and the craftsman,
Mhm.
as opposed to the industrialist.
Well, and there's always, with the technology, there's still that push and pull between the traditionalists and those who are wanting technology. So it's overtly stated in the book, part of the reason why space travel has not happened yet is not just the technology, but it's also spiritual and religious reasons that keep people from going to outer space and maybe angering star people and that sort of thing.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, they're like what happened is like this meteorite came down and destroyed the world, right? So I think that's definitely part of the history of the world. So, you know, what if you I mean, and what if you're not thinking about it in spiritual terms, but what if there's still like rocks out there and we go up there and we disturb them and they all start falling down, right? So even
Right.
from a practical, you know, so yeah, I think it's really fascinating, and I like that that's how they really want to explain this before you get into the verse. So they do have a list on page 119 of the different technologies that do not exist. I don't. You can look that up if you want to. I don't know if we need to let's read them, but I think I liked that it kind of. I always like a setting that tells you, okay, this is a technology that exists, and especially in a sci-fi setting, right? Do you have okay for me? Is it space opera or is it hard sci-fi, right? Do they have faster than light travel or not? That type of thing, right? So then
Yeah.
really like it when a rule set tells you this is the technology, this is what you're grounded on, because then when you get to the next phase, how the game works, character creation, you're like, okay, this is what I'm starting with, right? This is my context.
Yeah. So that list is nuclear power, nanotechnology, large scale biological and chemical weapons, large scale explosives, artillery, ballistic missiles, fossil fuel, orbital satellites, and rockets.
Yep. Yeah, because
So,
they've developed a different way.
right.
Yeah, so I mean, really, like well, I would say like our fission-based nuclear power that has developed couldn't occur based on some of the physics and terminology they threw out. It's more of like it could be more of a clean fusion that could develop in this verse at some point, as opposed to like
Awesome.
dirty fission. So anyway, it's pretty cool. I mean, right? Would you? It's your game, so I don't know. I mean, this could be whole campaigns that you could develop along these lines for what kind of technology is developed.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we're getting to the end of section one of the book, and it ends with another story.
Oh, neat.
Um, how the moon got its dents.
Oh, that's a great story. I like that.
Coyote loved to play with the animals. Most of all, they loved to kick ball all day long. They would play under the sun until the twilight. And he just couldn't wait for the sun to come back up to start playing ball again. So he wanted to play ball at night so that so they didn't have to play when the sun goes down. It's such a that sounds just like something you want to try to tell a kid why they have to go to bed, why it's time to come in, it's time to settle down, time to eat dinner, time to be quiet. And I've just noticed it's been a while since I read it. So he basically winds up climbing the tallest tree and leaping up and trying to grab the moon. And because the moon glows, so it glows, they can kick it around at night in the dark,
Mhm.
right? And so that's how the moon gets its dent. They're playing kickball with it.
Yeah, there you can see like the story there on the right
Yeah.
there, how the moon got its stems from that. So that's pretty cool. I think and then also right next to it the list that BJ read out of the technology that does not exist. So I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, and that's kind of the basis for the sci-fi setting is the Adanadi and the technology.
Yeah.
All right. So I have not made a character. But I hear that Sarah has and BJ has started. So I guess you guys can tell us the next step of what we're going to talk about, character creation.
Okay,
It does
I can
start on.
share. You mean character? Do you have your character in PDF or on your computer, or is it just written out?
Oh, I'm so old school, it's on paper.
Oh wow.
I have a character sheet here. I can share so people can see the sheet while we talk about it.
Yeah, you could put they do have a form fillable on one you can print out and write on, and they do have a form fillable on their the Coyote and Crow website. So you could track that down.
Let me share that.
After having done both versions, I would recommend doing the PDF at least the first time.
Okay.
The
Cool.
fillable.
Right.
Mhm.
All right, you guys can see that.
Yes, you could definitely see that. Thank you.
So I'd started filling in to make a character, but we can
Yeah, so there's a brief summary up on page 124. There's a summary on. I actually am appreciating this more and more in games and game design. Here's how to make a character, like in your simple steps or as a table. It's really very helpful to me.
But the first thing you do is, and now that I got this open, I got to open my book. Unless somebody else wants to go through that.
So the first thing you do is choose your motivation, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it
And
gives.
they have some.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just saying they already give you some to choose from, but you can also with your story guide come up with others.
Right.
And they give you an optional role, which I really like, which is when you take an action, it's either in line with your motivation or not. And if it's not in line with your motivation, then your success number, it takes an additional 1 to accomplish that. Or if it's in line with your motivation, it takes 1 less. So
yeah, cool.
Which I know is getting into the game mechanics, but
yeah. Do you think we should?
I do like that option.
Okay, I guess we're going to definitely get to the game mechanics. I mean, unless you think you want to throw in the basic game mechanic, if we are going to discuss it. Do you want to do that now or?
Sometimes the stats don't make a lot of sense unless you know the game mechanics. So maybe we should.
Yeah, at least the basic mechanics. We don't need all the like nuances, but like what is like we stated last time, you use D12 is sort of the base.
It's D12.
And it's a pool of D12s, correct?
Yep.
It is.
Right. So and then it's your final stat. So if you're creating a pool for
Here my die.
Yeah. Oh, and they do sell sets of D12s because really, I mean, you have six. Yeah, I've seen sets of D6s and sets of sets of D10s, but it's nice to get a set of D12s then specifically for this game. If not, you have to get like a pound of dice and pick out all the D12s. Right.
Yep.
But it's cool. And actually a D12 is like, that dice that's not used as much, which I appreciate as well. So any case, right, it's a pool of D12s is that when you're rolling for, say, to test a skill, or it's a pool of D12s based on your stat and the skill that is under that stat. Is that correct?
Yeah. So you create a dice pool. Determine the success number and roll the dice pool.
How do you determine the success number?
That's a good question.
Is it like
So this is the default success number is 8, which means you have to get an 8 or higher on a die for it to count as a success.
Okay.
Plenty of
And it's-
situations alter that though, so there may be times where that number gets adjusted or up or down.
Mhm. And you're not adding dice, right? It's like the number that's on the dice.
Right.
Eight or better. Okay.
So the story guide will assign the final number. Most of the time, it'll be between 5 and 11.
Mhm.
It can never go below 2. It can never go above 12. I'm assuming it can't go below 2 because 1 is a phase. You have to have 1 be a not a success.
Mhm.
It probably can go above 12 because you can get bonuses that will allow you to roll higher than 12 on a die.
Right. Right. So the base, so like at 8 plus on a D12, I guess it's about a little over a 33% chance, right, of success.
Right.
So
Um,
so that's curious. All right.
Yeah. So to create a dice pool, you look at your abilities, skills, and stats.
Mhm.
So for example, they give
There are a lot of examples.
Guy has an agility of 3 and a perception of 2 and wants to use her ranged weapon skill of 2. She adds 2 dice from the ranged weapon skill, 3 dice from the agility for a dice pool of 5 dice. She also adds any dice that she would have received from a ranged weapon she's using. So the equipment
Oh,
itself
bonus
might
equipment.
also
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
Okay.
add dice to the pool.
Yeah, I really appreciate that in modern game design too, is that like equipment matters, right? The equipment, it gives you something, right? Stuff that you find matters. It gives you a bonus somewhere. So it makes it important, right, to them. So it's kind of neat. Okay. And then you roll your dice and then
Mhm.
you're looking for successes. Is it default 1 success or?
Each one you roll is considered a fail and subtract will counter 1 success. So you pick your failures, pull out that number of successes, and then that tells you how many net successes you have.
Oh, wow,
Um,
okay.
And
so
you
they
either met
say
your
what
success
you-
number,
Yeah.
Right.
What's that? You said,
and then you either meet your success number or not.
okay. So so for example, in a basic skill test, you just need 1 success, or are there times you're going to need more than 1 success?
That's where I'm still. Since we haven't played it, I don't have all this internalized.
Yeah.
I haven't played it either, but I thought you need to meet your number. I only got as far as character creation.
You should
to be
now have a
honest.
group of dice in front of you with varying numbers, and you should have an idea of whether each of those adds or subtracts successes.
Right.
Now you need to do is add them up. Add 1 for every success. Add 2 for every success on a critical die if you're using the critical die rule, and subtract 1 for every fail. 1 or more successes is a success. 0 successes is a failure. Less than 0 successes, if for some reason you get a negative number, is a critical failure. So you just need 1 success. But I think one thing we need to keep in mind is that an 8 out of 12, again, the odds are most rolls are not going to be a success, and so you want to get that dice pool as
Mhm.
big as you can.
Right.
Get as many successes in there as you can, just so that you get not only 1 success, but enough successes to counteract any of those other rolls.
Mhm. And they have, like I said, they have examples throughout the book. There's a really great example
Yeah.
on page 273 of the book, and they go through the process of, even what the person who rolls gets on the dice, and then, how you used other things like focus and legendary status and things like that. So, and that is on page 272 is like a dice check quick reference, which is handy, something to print out or put as a handout on a VTT, I think would be great. Yeah, but it's a pretty easy mechanic, especially, usually it's an 8. It can go up, it can be adjusted up or down depending on the difficulty, and you need 1 success. Sometimes you might need more than that. Right. So there you go, page 272. goes the dice check a quick reference. So
Yep.
so pretty cool.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting bit of game design from like with probability and dice mechanic is you just need the one success. But the odds of success on one dice are not, I mean, the odds are a failure on any one die roll. So you stack die.
But there's also a risk involved too, which I do like, because if you roll a bunch of dice, your chance of getting a one increase too, and those remove successes. So there's definitely this risk reward type of chance. So like a little bit of luck gambling kind of feel as well. I think I like that.
Seems very, I mean, we have in a lot of native cultures have a lot of games that are about
Gambling.
Betting on outcomes. They are games of chance and probability based on throwing sticks, throwing types of die, things like that. So that is I think between they have an in-game reason for why we're using the 12-sided die based on a base 12 system of mathematics, but also just this is a very very just to me it feels very native.
Mhm.
Which is weird because all role-playing games that use dice are really that. There's just something about the flavor of this that to me feels very reminiscent of native games for some reason.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. Yeah, and extra, like I was just looking quickly, like extra successes can matter, for example, in combat. Right. So they do more damage. It's very, makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I don't think we need to talk about like combat or death and dying and healing and that kind of stuff. At this stage, if we get to some actual play, which I'd love to do, then we'll go over all of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, my recollection of the combat is, I mean, you're using this dice pool system, but once you start playing it and look at sort of taking damage and healing and recovering and resting, and when you die and stuff like that, it's not going to be anything that people who aren't familiar with role playing games would find strange.
Mm-hmm.
It's once you get into that, I mean, pretty much all games kind of handle.
Yeah, there's a set of numbers that represent your health. It gets ablated as you go through the combat. So there's ways to heal it.
Something they do talk about, in Death and Dying, as they say, this is a game that's not designed for character death to happen very often. And that character death should be very meaningful, just like it is in the real world. This is someone who is a person, they've died, they have friends, they have loved ones. It should not be, this isn't a setting where we're supposed to view life as cheap. It's not a pathetic aesthetic kind of game. So I think it is interesting that they do suggest that a character can actually not die unless the player is okay with them dying.
It's more like you get to whatever 0 on the damage track, and you decide if they're broken or whatever, as opposed to
which I think may particularly know, Carl, we run in a lot of OSR circles sometimes that may go against the grain for some people. That's sort of the complaint about modern D&D and Pathfinder, is that the characters are too super heroic and they don't die, and the player but I think here, the point is that this isn't a game that's about that. This is much more of I think moving in the realm of a storytelling game. And the death should be meaningful. So is the player okay with that? Well, if it's happened, then let's role play this out as a meaningful event that affects everyone.
Right.
And that gives your character, did they make a noble sacrifice? Is there a lesson learned or a story to be told or something memorable about their death? If not, let's, maybe they just, now they're disabled and they need to be retired from adventuring for a while.
Right.
Or you can let them recuperate somewhere and play a different character for a while until they can come back. There's a lot of ways to go with it.
Right. Are captured, right? I mean, that's another possibility too. Right. So, right. So cool. So we were talking about character creation, and then now we've talked about how the game kind of works, which is great. So, and that was because, well, when Sarah mentioned, what motivations and how they're important
Motivation.
how they're important mechanically. So after motivations, then what?
Then you're going to choose an archetype.
So I think we should definitely discuss archetypes, right? Because I think that's right. Yeah.
Because so you can choose a role within an archetype, and you're not necessarily boxed in. Like they specifically tell you, like you can choose to be a warrior, but maybe you didn't like war. Now you're a farmer, but you're still a warrior, and so you still have all those abilities that go along with that in your role. So there's a lot of freedom still within the archetype to choose how you fulfill that archetype. I don't know if it's helpful to talk about the different archetypes or
We
just
definitely should mention them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think BJ is going to put it up. So that's like they
Yeah.
run from page 128 to like 130, and there's 6 of them.
If you guys remember the pin collection that I got, the collector's pin collection that I got, that's what they are. There's the 4 pins, one for each archetype, and then there's a set of pins that represent each path.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Are there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I thought there's 6 archetypes. Yeah, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sarah. You were talking about the.
You were talking about them.
I don't know. I was just talking about them. So you pick which one. They come with different bonuses that we'll use later in character creation. So you just kind of put a pin in it when you're making a character right here. Just remember, jot it down somewhere. You get a +1 to agility. Because it comes in when you actually are doing some of the scores in the ranks. Then you pick the one that you feel like fits your character and their motivation, or just kind of the idea who you want them to be.
Yeah.
You
got the warrior, which I think most people can kind of get their head around, right?
Yeah. You focus on strength. It looks like each archetype has a particular ability score focus. Right.
Yeah, so like the warrior gets a free rank in brawling or melee weapon skill, and they get a +1 to their strength attribute.
Yeah, scout focuses on agility.
So you're kind of seeing at first you've got your kind of fighter type. Now you've got kind of a ranger, could be a ranger, could be a rogue.
Then you get a tinker, which is intelligence based.
You get a healer on the next page.
Yeah, the healer. And then you got a seeker, who's more of a kind of a mystic, you think? Would that be a way to describe the seeker?
Well, their perception is their stat, right? So
like investigate things.
Yeah, so
I made a character that was the seeker, and I went with the investigation angle.
Yeah, so it could
rather
be
than tracking.
a philosopher, a social scientist, but it could also be a bounty hunter or a detective. Or if you went the more spiritual route, someone who's sort of trying to understand the nature of reality, it's maybe a spiritualist or a mystic. Although a healer could also fall into that category as well.
Yep.
And then there's a whisperer, focused on charisma.
Right. So it's very interesting that there's like a key role in their society.
Yeah.
For each of these archetypes too, right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think we would equate that if we're kind of going back and comparing like D&D to a bard. But again, I think the important here of a culture that I think here we've entered an era in this world where they do have writing and written language, but it still very much harkens back to the importance of oral tradition, the storyteller and the keeper of lore and information. They preserve stories to help people understand. There's an important societal role there for a person who keeps the stories, keeps the histories, keeps the traditions, and make sure that everybody understands not only what they are, but where they come from, and puts them in context and things like that. And that's a very, I think, again, very, very culture bound way of thinking about it.
Yeah, so curious. So they have like I noticed that there are 9 stats, but 6 archetypes. So I wonder if they're all based on strength, agility. Yeah. Or so endurance, wisdom, and will are not. Are those?
They come into play when you pick your path.
Okay.
So you pick an archetype, and then you pick a path, which are the ones that you've been thinking more based on animal totems or animal spirits or concepts. And there are two stats related to each one. Here you can see what they are. So you've got an archetype, which is more of a broad thing, and then this path will sort of hone in on how you would maybe, I guess, fulfill that archetype.
Okay. So Sarah, you've kind of gone through the steps. So you said you chose a seeker.
I chose a seeker, and then I chose the Path of the Crow.
Okay. That you'd be Joe Richter would be a big fan of yours for choosing the Path of the Crow. He's a big
Of the Crow.
Yeah.
He's a big crow fan. Actually, he has like a gaggle of crows that follow him around in Seattle.
Yeah, he
pretty awesome.
He started feeding them. And did he get the same group back when he moved?
I don't know if he got the same group back. He's like moved, and then the crows like
found him.
I guess.
They're smart.
Yeah.
Pretty smart.
I saw
So
it was a brief synopsis that said that when a crow dies, the rest of the, I guess it's a murder.
Murder, yeah, it's a murder, yeah.
They really investigate the surrounding. They perform like an investigation to try to figure out ostensibly maybe what the danger is. So, so they know what happened. So they're pretty freaky in their intelligence.
Yeah. Do you know if there's any like I haven't, so I wonder if they're going to expand upon like the paths, do you think, or is that in future design
Hope so.
considerations?
Yeah, I think you'd want at least one path that pairs every possible pairing. Because I think here, you may have that here. I don't know. Maybe that's why they have the number they do. And really, these paths, that's really what I think it comes down to. It comes down to which 2 stats. And then I think there are some special abilities that are tied to each one. So that may be where you'd want to expand on those, so you could expand on the abilities.
Yeah, I guess you could game it, but I don't know. I might just choose something because I like that animal.
Yeah.
So,
like, I noticed there's no wolf here, but the coyote kind of fills probably the same niche you would want a wolf to represent. Same thing with a raven. I mean, crows and ravens are technically different animals.
They are different.
Although they're closely related.
Yeah. I mean, ravens have sharp teeth. I like ravens a lot. I mean, they do have a spider.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot to choose from. I don't know if they have every single pairing. Like, I don't see strength and endurance. Do I? For example.
Nope.
Yeah. I see Path of the Wolf would be in strength and endurance to me.
Maybe, yeah.
So, but you could, I guess, Sarah, do they have like guidelines for the story guide to, like, if you wanted to take a particular, because I know they have guidelines for, like, if you're an indigenous person, like, you could, really create a character, right, that could be from that future tribe, right, or that.
Right. Or you mean like create your own path?
Yeah.
Not that I remember, because it's tied to your stats.
Yeah, but like we just pointed out, there's combinations that aren't quite there, but that's cool.
I wonder if that's to avoid min-maxing.
You can min-max though. I mean, if you're a warrior, if you were a warrior and you chose Path of the bison or eagle, right? I mean,
yeah,
for example, but You can, but I think to me
I would,
it's
if
a
I
fun
was running
exercise,
this,
right?
if I was running this with a bunch of people who were native and that like they're all like, hey, we're gonna create characters that reflect our actual, then I would say, yeah, the animals don't necessarily have the same meaning in every tribe.
Right.
Right.
So like there's no rabbit here. Rabbit is very important in southeastern tribal stories. Rabbit is basically what Coyote is in a lot of the Western. He's the trickster and the mischief maker. So, I would say if we wanted to have Path of the Rabbit, if you were going to be a Chickasaw or Cherokee or Choctaw, take the Path of the Coyote and we'll call it Path of the Rabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely should customize it to, right, to something that's more meaningful.
Like they
I think
don't,
that's-
well, they do have the raccoon, right?
They do have raccoon.
They do have raccoon.
But for say like a Muskogee, if I'm understanding correctly, don't I stand to be corrected. My understanding is for the Muskogee Creek, the raccoon is a warrior. It would be seen more as an actual warrior
Mhm.
character.
Right.
And they might also, think about the ones who come down from closer to the Everglades. They
Mhm.
might have the path of the alligator.
Or snake, or
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like for some Southwest tribes, a rattlesnake was important, right?
Yeah.
And ravens more than crows, especially for South.
So you could reflavor them,
Southwest.
or you could maybe come up with your.
Oh, I would think so. I think this is particularly for the Cahokia, maybe the Cahokia tradition that they talk about in here.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what I would interpret that. So,
It's certainly if they're going to go out to Hawaii, you're going to.
you don't even have these animals.
You get a much different.
Or I mean, man, you go South Central America, you'd have jaguars and ocelots and right.
And I got to
caimans.
talk to my.
Monkeys.
Yeah,
I got to talk to my cousin's wife, who's from Hawaii, who's native Hawaiian, and say what.
Yeah, I think it's.
What,
I think it's
we
cool
do for
'cause
Hawaii here?
already we're thinking of like what expansions can we make. It's good. It's good to
Oh
it's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, definitely. If you get into South America, you'd have to have jaguars, you have to have monkeys.
Mhm. Yep. Toucans.
Capybaras.
Yeah.
So that might be the most in effect. They just sit there and stare.
Capybara. I mean, I could see.
Or sloth.
I could see badger or beaver for capybara, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, it's cool. It's fun to think about and and I think it definitely, as a story guide, you should be able to interpret that as how you play, based on your players, right? Players
Yeah.
makeup. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So after the path, which you can see,
After-
there's so much fun speculation to do. Then we do our character points.
Then you do your character points.
And it looks like here it's 5 points
Well,
for. Go
First,
ahead.
you do.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Family. Nope.
No,
You
age and-
do gifts and burdens. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
you
talking
do
about?
gifts
When
and
you say
burdens.
family? Because family is my favorite gift and burden, probably in this game and in real life.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So before you do your stats, you do gifts and burdens because if you can gain more points.
Oh, okay. Well, on 124 they have do your stats and stuff, and then your gifts and burdens. But then I guess you get your points, then you choose your gifts, then you do your stats, and then you do your skills.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you have leftover points from your gifts and burdens, then you can use those on your skill and your skill ranks.
Mhm. Right. So we
and your
really
abilities.
we understand the concept of stats and skills, but maybe we should go over gifts and burdens because that's not something that is in a lot of games. That type of, So what are
the first place I thought it was GURPS.
was it like flaws and isn't it?
Yeah, with GURPS you can take quirks and flaws to get more character.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Yeah, I guess in Walking Dead that I played recently, it's like issues, for example, is a thing. So, and talents, I guess, is issues and talents.
Mhm.
But the gifts and burdens, it says on page 134, are the unique challenges, features, or resources your character has access to or must deal with.
Yeah, and you get 5 points to get to buy gifts.
Yeah. Cool.
And then a
And you have
burden can offset that to restore some of those points.
All right. So what did you choose family for your seeker?
I chose family. Did you choose family too, BJ?
No, I didn't, because I thought that was too easy.
It was too easy. I loved it.
I chose well, why don't you tell us about the concept of your character, and then the choices will make more sense.
Well, I admittedly just chose family because I really liked it. So I did mine based on Kiowa culture because I wanted to see what that was like
Oh,
to
neat.
take my culture and do. What was that?
I said that's neat. Really, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is not one of like my people would have been in like the freelance, like up and down the plains. So what I did for mine was family is and was continues to be very important. In the game, family can give you support, resources, comfort, needed items. So they use an example of like you need to borrow a sunwing. Well, you can check with your family and see if your family knows somebody, or if, hey, I've got a cousin who has a sunwing I can borrow, which to me felt very organic, and I loved that mechanic because I'm sure BJ has heard me say this a lot. I feel like I say quite often, well, I have a cousin, or my cousin did this, or my cousin has this. I
Yep.
feel like that's pretty common.
Yep. So you made a seeker.
Yeah, we'll start from the beginning. I guess you
Oh,
made a
stuff in the
secret.
beginning.
Yeah.
I made a seeker with I gotta read my handwriting, with motivated by responsibility. Talk about so there I felt like that went well with family. I chose to have it as a gift, but also family in the game. The mechanic is they are a distraction to what you do sometimes too. So just like you call on them, they can call on you. And so that seemed to fit really well. There's going to be, I think, some conflict there with different responsibilities.
That's what's known
Uh,
as a player burden, but a game master
The
gift.
game master boon. Yeah. A game master gift, I guess, in this context.
And then I chose another gift of the spiritual world connection. And then I gave myself like an opponent as my burden.
Mm.
So, to balance those out
Okay.
some.
Cool. And it's
And then
like
I
one
wanted to
for
reserve points.
yeah, it's 1-for-1. So right, you choose each level of gifts costs a point, or you could choose them at different levels. Is that how that works?
You can choose it at different levels.
Oh yeah,
And
there
then
it
they
is.
cost
Okay.
different points.
Yeah, level 1 is mild or trivial, 2 is
Mhm.
serious and consistent or important, 3 is constant, pervasive, or critical. So which level did you choose for these?
So I chose my gifts to be 2 level 1s and then my burden level 2. So they
Okay.
cancel each other out.
Cool.
So then I reserve my points.
Yeah.
But it means in terms of game mechanics, I'm going to have some opponent that's just going to derail things every now and then.
Or yeah, opponent rival. That's kind of cool. Another
Mhm.
great tool for the story guide.
Yeah.
So neat.
And I think that's what those burdens do. They give the story guide lots of stuff to work with that the
Mhm.
characters have kind of said they already have an idea how to engage with it if it comes up.
All right.
Right.
So I made a seeker as well. Probably for we're all nerds. We're all kind of intellectuals. I think we're going to be drawn to that. Path of the Badger is motivated by acceptance. So what I thought is also sort of drawn on my own Cherokee heritage. I needed. Why would this character be halfway across a continent? And so the idea is that this character is. I took the infamy as a burden, and the idea is that back home his family got into some bad political entanglements, and he left to get out of the middle of it to come maybe study or be a student or something, maybe in the freelance. So so it's just a level 1 infamy. It's just there. Some people might go, "Hey, wait a minute, are you from that clan that we heard about that?" Or somebody may show up and have a oh God, it's that guy, bucking around the corner.
Yeah.
We're gonna have problems if they see me. So that was a burden I took, which I think wound up giving me 1 net point, because otherwise I took gifts. I took wealth. I thought, well, it's going to come with a little bit of money to start over, to get things he needs, since he doesn't have any local family yet, which is why his acceptance is an issue. He's trying to find a new place to exist. But the other gifts were spirit world connection and animal connection, which I just took at a level 2 because I couldn't think of anything. I still wanted this to be kind of a spiritually focused character. And I like the way they describe both of those. So like an animal connection at level 1 is, you get along with animals. Level 2 is you can probably interact with animals, maybe communicate with animals, even animals that might not normally. And level 3 can almost become burdensome, because it's like, well, animals are just going to come find you. which might be useful, but it could also kind of be odd sometimes, that everywhere you go, birds kind of land and chirp at you, or every stray dog on the street comes up and follows you around. And the same thing with the spirit world connection. I mean, that can be a real source of power and resource, but at the same time, if you get too high on that, that also means that spirits are constantly coming to you when they have something that they think is important, because you're the one that can hear them and can see them.
That's interesting. I like that.
Can become an intrusion too at times.
That's great. I can see this like just that, for example, is kind of reminding me of Reservation Dogs, right? One of the characters in there has a spirit connection.
William Knife Man.
Yeah.
Oh, young warrior.
Yep. But if you don't mind me sharing what I was thinking of, I haven't kind of quite developed it yet. So I was thinking of a scout character, actually, probably Path of the Coyote. And then, I liked independence as a motivation. And then, seeing as I definitely relate to the gift and the burden of family as well, being from a Latino culture, very, much family is so important. And I feel like that independence and that gift or burden of the family would kind of clash, which would be a fascinating exploration. So I think, but I also like, as a scout and being independent, I like the animal connection as well. So I think that's kind of I'm leaning along those lines. So I guess we'd have a scout and a seeker could be kind of fun. So
yeah. The other thing is always, I think it's good to kind of come with some character ideas and then just discuss them as a group, because you want to change some stuff to say, let's get a little more diverse. Let's get some different, some places we have common connections and places where we're a little more different, so that you can get all kinds of, stuff going on. So,
cool.
So 5 points, you can come out. Is there a limit on the number of points you can carry forward on gifts and burdens? I'm trying to remember.
You cannot have negative points, but it doesn't necessarily say you have 5 points.
Right. I think it's just 0 or more.
Yeah, don't abuse it, or a story guide might get mad. But
yeah,
so right. So yeah, I mean, it's cool. Where are we to next after that?
So then that's where you, I think, start doing your stats and your skills.
Yeah, I thought that's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's nothing different really about stats that I could see.
Yeah, there are 9 stats, and I like the way they described how they work, because I think if you think about the 6 classic D&D stats, sometimes there's a little bit of there's some odd pairings in there. Why does that stat cover that instead of, so you've got kind of a grid. You've got you've got physical stats, mental stats, and spiritual stats.
Oh, I like the division into spiritual stats. That's curious.
But then you've got power, finesse, and reserve, which reserve to me is more of a
Those are the derived stats.
no, those are the three categories. So you've
Oh,
got
okay.
each stat represents one of those
Oh,
domains. So like strength is
Mhm.
physical power, intelligence is mental power, and spirit is spiritual power.
okay.
And then agility would be physical finesse, perception is mental finesse, and charisma is a sort of spiritual finesse.
So it's kind of like you get this grid, right? Is that
Yeah.
what, and that's reflected on the character sheet.
And it's on page 143 as well.
Mhm.
And then endurance is your physical reserves, wisdom is your mental reserves, and willpower or will is your spiritual reserves. And so then you derive physical defense, a mental defense, and a spiritual defense from those stats. And then that's where you can take damage in each of those three categories as well.
And then we have derives after that. After you spread all your points.
Yeah, I think you can here again. You can have a few left over, right, to carry on the skills. You got 42 points for stats, and of course, it's kind of like your typical point buy. The higher you go, it's not a 1-to-1. It gets exponentially more expensive to go to the next higher stat.
You can only add from your gifts and burdens.
Okay, so you have to use all that.
So you got to use all. You get 42 points for your stats, and then 42 points for your skills, and then you can take from whatever's left over from your gifts and burdens between the two, or all in one of those.
All right. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's what I did when I played around. I think I bumped one stat. I took one of my lower stats and just kind of raised it with one extra from my gift.
Yeah, and the stats range from
Burdens.
1 to
I
5.
spent it on skills.
Yep.
And the skill rank ranges from 1 to 6. It looks like.
So say if you had a strength of 3 and you're doing something, you get that's 3 dice in the dice pool for anything related to using your strength. And then your skills, same thing. You got 42 points there, which you can also bring in stuff left over from your that. And same thing, it increases. It goes from 1 to 6, and it increases begin exponentially to go up. But there are general skills and then there are specialized skills that cost more to gain ranks in. So and those are, I think the specialized skills are those subsets of generalized skills.
So it will be like maybe you have your melee skill, that's your general skill, but then you can become specialized in a war club.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's 28.
So that started to remind me of Traveler.
Yeah. There's 28 general skills. And then all sorts of specializations, kind of whatever you can come up with, but they give you examples, under that category.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so then you got the nice thing on the skills thing is because they're tied to the stat. It shows you where to put in your stat. All right, let me show you this here. I do like this feature, the class. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's unique necessarily to. I think there are probably other games do this, but so you've got, your base stat. The skill is based on, and then the rank, which I didn't assign for this yet, but I have a 1 here because that's a bonus rank I get for being for my archetype. And that'll tell you right there how many dice to roll. Total. That's the number of dice you're going to roll. So the DM says, all right, you're doing an investigation and it's a straight up 8, or because of this situation, maybe it's a 6 or maybe it's a 10. And that you know how many dice to roll and how to immediately determine whether you succeeded or not.
Yeah. Nice. Cool.
And then finally, let's see.
Ability. What is choose your ability? That's what it says. Choose an ability. Is that like a talent or a feat?
Thought,
These are the ones that are more like, feats based on your, it's like
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Power of the Bear. Your character can temporarily increase their strength.
Mm-hmm.
So these are where you're starting to get into those metahuman abilities.
Oh, these are the ones that the Adonai
that the
give
path
you.
gives you.
Yeah, only 15 to 20% of people receive an ability when they choose their path. So for most people, they've chosen a path and it just sort of shapes their outlook, their temperament, their kind of way of doing things. But for 15 to 20% of people, it actually manifests the superhuman ability. So you start out with one ability from your path.
Mm-hmm.
Is it on 172? There's a whole
List. Yeah.
table. Mhm.
And they have a cost to use. So and they say, they note on here, they do not display themselves the way powers do in superhero comics. They're usually more subtle. Oftentimes, people can use their abilities without anyone knowing they're being used. Although I imagine if you like throw a truck with the power of the bear, it's clear what's going on, but
Right.
it's not like you're hulking out and your muscles are bulking up and what's going on. Here, let me put that up real quick on the screen.
Yeah. So Sarah, anything particular or interesting in your skills? And then what ability did you choose, I guess?
And my skills, I did in my skills. So one of your skills is survival.
Mhm.
And because the plains have historically been a difficult place, I went ahead and gave myself a plains survival skill bonus
Mhm.
for those different climates. And then I gave specialized skills in knives because Kiowa women were known for their knife work. So a little bit both.
And then what ability did you end up choosing then?
I wrote down, it's been a long time ago.
Mhm.
I wrote down Farsight. Yeah, Farsight. I had to go reread that. It's been a minute.
Is that
So that lets your
The
character
wisdom
to
one.
see, hear, and experience their natural senses from distant locations or through people they're familiar with.
Ooh.
So if you got
Is that-
that family network,
uh-huh. Is that a perception skill or a there it is.
wisdom and
Right
perception,
here. Yeah, okay. Remote sensing. So
which we didn't go into it, but I gave myself decent perception and wisdom. So
Mhm.
yeah. I didn't get this far. So
That's why I'm asking Sarah.
Path of the Badger, intelligence and will. Is that right? That's what I said I picked.
mhm.
Character. So
Oh, you can pick from your primary or secondary then.
yeah.
Mhm.
So that's intelligence and will. So let's see what I would pick here if I was gonna pick one here. Wasp sting, make mental attack. Or what was the other one? Wisdom or will for the badger? Will let's see, Wolverines was how could I not take Wolverines?
Nice.
Spirit Covenant, extraordinary luck, good and bad. That would be fun. They have good luck. Or Owl's Watch, improved reaction rolls with the mind. I don't know what I'd pick.
Yeah, those are fun ones.
Those are good ones. Let's see what Spirit's Covenant does, just because that sounds like a really fun ability. By watching at home, pardon me while I flip through the book for a second.
Yeah, I would probably choose like Arrow's Wish based on my character concept. So the agility, increased odds of success with ranged weapons with mind and soul.
So Spirit's Covenant, the character is considered lucky, blessed, or cursed, depending on who you ask. How it's viewed, even by the character themselves, varies.
That definitely fits in with your infamy, right?
Yeah. Not everyone who has it enjoys this ability. There's debate over how Spirit Covenants work, which is hinted at by the name. It's been given by the people of Cahokia. Some feel that it is a subtly aggressive psychic ability similar to Wasp Sting. Others feel this ability is an indirect connection with the spirit world, or the black. The reason for the impression lies in how the effect and how it's employed. It's always active and is applied to all roles involving the character, even when allies are trying to provide a benefit to them. There's no known way to turn it off or deactivate it. There are two game effects. The character can ignore the first fail during a check, removing one from the dice pool. Secondly, anytime a check is directed specifically at the character, whether by an ally or enemy, any twos that are rolled count as a fail. Well, that sounds like overall bad. Well, I guess when it's just you, you're removing your odds of success go up when it's just you, but when someone else gets involved, it screws the probability.
It says the fails can be modified by your focus, though.
Yeah.
So it could be fun.
That almost sounds like no, because it's not active. I was gonna say the Scarlet Witch, but she does
kind of like luck, right? Or hex.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But yeah, those are.
Yeah. So after that, it's like after you choose your ability, then you determine your starting equipment. How challenging did you get that far, Sarah?
I did not get that far, although I did read about the equipment.
Okay.
And there are different.
Do you just like choose if you choose a package or like an equipment package, or you just pick things that make sense? It's between
you and the storyteller.
Okay.
That's at least what I gathered. I think I read it a while ago. There's not. It gets into the game mechanics of how resources work too, in terms of your equipment.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I think that you don't have you have like a wealth. It's like a score where it just sort of kind of tells you what things are easy to obtain and what things are not based on your wealth. It's not there's not a discrete unit of currency that you use.
Right. Well, cool.
I will flash this up here real quick. This is from the equipment chapter just because I think it's a neat piece of artwork. Just show kind of what the characters look like.
Yeah.
So you can see sort of the very much reflective of different sort of styles of clothing that would be traditional indigenous clothing, but also you can see very modern, like cargo pockets and goggles and some kind of tech, worked into this here. So, pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah, it's on page 216 in the book if you're following along at home. Well, cool. So then derived stats, anything interesting there?
You've got an initiative score, which is your agility plus your perception plus your charisma.
Okay. And that is that also a dice pool, and then you do successes, or
it's generally between 3 and 12, and then that's your score.
Oh, okay. So you don't roll it. This is just.
I believe you can, once things start, you can choose to change your position, but you can never go above your score, if I remember that correctly. It's like, so this is your initiative. You can choose to have a lower initiative, but you can't go higher.
Okay.
So there's some strategy involved since you're not rolling for it every time. There are your defense values. So your physical defense is your agility plus endurance, your mental defense, perception plus wisdom, and your mystical defense, charisma versus will. And then mind, body, and soul are effectively your hit points. Body is strength plus agility. So those are your three physical things make your body. You add them up. Your three. And if you go to whatever that score is, and then if you take your endurance score, say for physical, if you go to a negative, your endurance, that's when you die. So your body can go to 0 and you're just severely injured. But if you go into the negatives equal to your endurance score, that's death. And I think it follows the same pattern with the mind and soul.
Okay.
So you can die from mental and spiritual damage.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then it says, a background, weave it all together. A lot of people kind of start with that, I think, when you're starting to put those early things together. But
you weave everything
We
together.
We didn't talk about short and long-term goals.
Yeah,
That's part of your
did not.
character too.
You skip those.
And that's in step 13 apparently, is after you write your background, then you determine initial short and long-term goals. And do those have a mechanical effect? Do they
you can. So it's like you're seeking more charisma. My understanding is through the game you can potentially gain more charisma if that's one of your goals.
Yeah.
And that's really defined more. There's a section on it. After the equipment.
Yeah,
There's
goals and progress. Yep. That's chapter 11.
So short-term goals could be improving or gaining a skill.
Which can only be increased 1 point at a time.
Yeah, or obtaining certain types of equipment. I'm sure you can come up with other stuff. Those are examples. Long-term goals would be gaining a new ability or increasing a stat. And they give you some guidelines here. So it's like gaining a new ability should take about 8 sessions. Increasing a stat should be twice the like if you want to go from a 4 to a 5, you want to attain a 5, that should be about 10 sessions. It'd be twice whatever the number you're trying to get to is. Gaining a new gift, about 4 sessions. Increasing the level of a current gift, 2 times the level. Decreasing a burden, you can try to eliminate a burden. I think the idea is you've got to be working in every game session toward doing something to try to make meaningful progress. That, of course, involves you kind of working with the story guide to say, hey, is this, can I if I do this, will this kind of move me towards that goal on the story guide approving. So there's some give and take there.
So
I don't think you're not rolling. I don't think it's a rolling for anything. It's very much you make the story happen to so that outcome makes sense. Which I don't know. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this. I know I've, and this is where a lot of, I think, in other role-playing games, game masters will say, don't come to me with a 10-page written backstory for your character. Because I'm not going to work all that in. I got to design a dungeon. I've got to create a villain. I got other stuff to do. But some DMs say, yeah, bring me that because I'll work it into the story. I think here that's more erring on the side of maybe not so much your background, but your goals definitely can shape how the
Yeah, and your things like motivation, etc., right? Those are
Yeah.
going to be dry. So I think that the game sessions and adventures will be more character driven. So
Sorry.
I guess that character driven, right? So I know they have published adventures and all, but you're really going to have to. I think it's going to be some work between the players and the game master to kind of fit those motivations and goals and background into those adventures.
Yep.
Right? Or as you make your own, right? This you probably don't even, you could just weave them through, right? So
there's a little bit, we kind of previewed the D12 system they use.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the book is there's the kind of the section for the story guide on how to run the game, and then there's an introductory adventure.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So yeah, I think we got a hint of. So anything else you want to tell us particular about your character, Sarah, since you kind of got it all ready to go? Things that we missed or covered or didn't cover?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I feel like it definitely took me a little bit of time to really feel all of that out. For me personally, I don't think it was a quick character creation, but I was putting a lot of thought into it. And I think for the story guide, that also creates a lot of points for the story and the group, because you also have group goals that you're working towards too, and all of that. I think that gives the story guide a lot to work with and bringing all of those together.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we've covered it except for the story guide part, and we're not going to, of course, give you a description room by room of the adventure, because that'd be major spoiler. But whoever of us three or someone else comes to run for us, well, we wouldn't read it just in case they run that. So, but I actually, of the adventures I saw, the one that looks really very fascinating to me is this one called, I think, Passage Through the Ice or something like that, where because there's still glaciers. Oh, you saw that one?
I saw it, but I did not read it.
Yeah, well, I saw because there's still glaciers in the world because of the
Rocky Mountains are still pretty much
yeah, so that looks like pretty fascinating
ice age
exploration type adventure. So yeah, there's a lot of material out there that the authors or the company has put out for a lot of. So there's so Coyote and Crow. Do they have a name of the company, or is it just Coyote and Crow?
I think they're just called Coyote and Crow.
Yeah, so they're putting a lot of stuff, a lot of material out there. So
they've got. I haven't opened it. I'll probably review it on an episode of mine. But this of the Arcane Alias, this dice game. I believe this would be pronounced Niasi. It's a push your luck style game of chance inspired by traditional indigenous games. So it may very much give you an insight into why the dice pool works the way it does. It uses the same dice set. You've got 9 white, 12-sided, 3 black. There's 5 optional. Again, I haven't opened it, so I'll do that at some other point. But I know you can get from their website scoring pads when you run through everything. Yes. I also noticed on their website, along with those and the PDFs, there's some recipe cards from a Cherokee chef.
Oh wow!
I went to visit my cousin for Thanksgiving dinner last week, and we were kind of chatting, and he was like, "I got this recipe from that same person." I'm blanking on her name right now. I'm like, because he's a chef as well, Cherokee chef himself. So.
Yeah. That's cool.
But there's there's a squash soup on there that looks particularly delicious. So
that sounds good, especially on these cold late fall winter nights that are coming.
And then they've got a board game that I backed on Kickstarter that is I think gone into production. I think it's supposed to arrive maybe March is anticipated next year, called Wolves.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure what it was, but I thought, well, Coyote and Crow looks interesting. The artwork looks really cool. I might as well back it. Liked everything else so far.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm excited. I really, now that discussing character creation and the thought through it, I really want to get this to the table. So now it's just when and with whom.
We have to add it to our long list of unplayed games that we've got to.
Oh, well, we
Okay.
make it happen. I mean, so yeah. So that's you guys have any last thoughts, last words?
No.
This has been fun having
Yeah.
this dissecting the game with you guys.
Go out and get this game. I would be remiss if I didn't say, because my wife reminds me, please like, I should have said at the beginning, please like and subscribe to the Geomologist Presents YouTube channel. And hopefully you'll listen to the podcast as well. So, thank you so much, BJ and Sarah.